Welcome, football fans, USFL fans, to episode 29 of USFLA. What does the A mean? It stands for anything, literally. So it could be anything, but today it stands for merger. Don't think about it. Webb, why does it stand for merger?
Well, it's French. The merger, obviously, the big news this week is that the XFL and the USFL are talking about a merger. Is it going to happen? When's it going to happen? What's going to happen? What teams are going to survive? That has not been said. The only report is they're talking, or they're pretty serious, and they're going to the government for approval because monopoly, I'm guessing, right? Or antitrust or whatever the legal jargon.
Maybe, but the NFL, I mean, I don't think it can be when the NFL exists, but it doesn't matter. But yes, Sportico and Axios Sports both out of nowhere dropped articles saying that within as early as this week, we could have a merger announcement where the USFL and XFL will join forces and become one big spring league, which a lot of people have speculated. You know, I thought it would be cool from the get-go. A lot of people have been saying it nonstop, and people like you and I said, no, that's not going to happen. They're not going to do that. And then here it is. Like, yeah, there's video evidence. I felt kind of stupid. I was like, man, that happened like so much sooner than I thought it could, but it happened. And now we're possibly days away from these two leagues. You know, we have the USXFL, you know, and that's crazy. What was your first reaction? I just want to know what your first reaction to the news was.
So Sportico, obviously we've heard a few things from Sportico. They've broken a few things. I don't recall exactly what they've broken, but
they've been right.
First reaction was, no, like, who are these guys?
Yeah.
Like, and then you start to see that you need to pay a subscription to get their article and all this kind of stuff when you're researching them. And then Axios, when that came out, I was like, oh, this is real. And I am absolutely stunned. If you go back to that blindside from Xander, like, I was like, there's no way. There's no way. There's like
I said the same thing. I was like, no, they would never do it. It
was almost like my take on Prue Cup. Like, I was like, this is it. This is I am 100% right, and I can't be any further from the truth.
Yeah, no, I felt the same.
I
felt dumb.
I feel like the teams that are on the chopping block for the USFL, the XFL teams, I don't really know. I'm not close with them. I feel like our teams are kind of on that chopping block. So like you start to think, because they don't have that home stadium, and you start to think about it, and like all the time and effort and everything. Like, I love the Maulers. Like, I know you love the Gamblers. Shoot, you wear that shirt every single episode. I don't even wear yellow. You've got the same exact. Like, you're dedicated, looking like you only wear that shirt in your public life.
A lot of people think I only wear Gambler stuff. I genuinely wear non-Gambler stuff most.
You got the throwback red shirt, like, you got all this Gambler stuff. We're invested into this league.
Yeah.
It's fun. And it got a little scary. The more and more you hear, I think there's going to be a team in Houston. I don't know if they're called Gamblers or Roughnecks. And I think the Maulers are going to be somewhere. Are they in Canton? Are they in Pittsburgh? I don't know. But that team will be there. So I think our two teams are safe. I just don't know what to call them yet.
Yeah. So my first reaction was, crap. I was way wrong. I've been saying since the beginning that this would never happen, and now it's happening. So I was like, well, that looks bad. But then people started talking about how many teams would be in the Super League, you know, and for some reason, the number is not 16. Nobody is saying 16. A lot of people are saying 12. We've heard some people say 10. Heck, we saw right now, before we started this, we saw someone say 10, and only 4 of them would be USFL, which is wild to me. But then my thought immediately shifted to, what if the Gamblers are gone? And I've done all this work. I've covered this team for 2 years. You know, I got to know the coaches. I've interviewed all the coaches. I've interviewed so many of the players. I've traveled to games, and I thought, what if it's gone? What if it's gone? And that's a scary thought. You know, I had players, I've had coaches who aren't even on the team anymore, who aren't even in the league. And they said, do you know what's happening? I said, I don't know. I've had players who have never returned DMs on the Gamblers DMing me, and they're saying, "Hey, man, do you think we're gonna make it? Do you think we're gonna survive the merger?" And I have to say, I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen. Best case scenario, they think the Gamblers have been there since '83. They have seniority. We're gonna move the Roughnecks or just dissolve the Roughnecks. That's probably not gonna happen. I just the Roughnecks have been there. Recency bias. People know about the Roughnecks. The Gamblers haven't been in Houston since the 80s. And so I think then second best scenario is that we move to Austin and we become the Austin Wranglers, which would be cool. Or we just rebrand entirely. The big thing is I just don't want to lose the coaching staff and roster. I don't want them to just dissolve that or, put them on another team. The team's gone. So that's sad. I don't know. And I'm sure you thought the same thing about the Maulers. You said, oh my gosh, what if the Maulers are done? The cool thing would be if they stay. I mean, if they become the Canton Maulers, does that really hurt you?
No, me personally, no.
Nah, it doesn't affect you. I mean, some of the Pittsburgh fans are probably going, nah, but
they still showed up though. You were there at the championship. But I think the city of Houston and whatever happens with the city of Houston for the teams will tell you who's in charge.
Yeah.
I think that's the bellwether franchise or city location that will tell you, okay, this is real. I think Vegas is on a chopping. If we're talking XFL, I think Vegas is on a chopping block because of the whole stadium thing. I think Seattle is because of where it's at. If the USFL is in charge and the people that have made the USFL go into the third year, Seattle's definitely got to be on the chopping block if they're going down below 16. Me personally, I hope they stay at 16. I hope they go 4 divisions.
I think it would be so cool.
Yeah, it would be awesome. I already thought of a 12-game schedule and everything. I just hope the Maulers stay. I hope the Gamblers stay. But I hope the identity of the USFL stays because I think the style of football, the rules. Coach Hull tweeted it. We don't want that kickoff. We don't need that kickoff.
Sucks, man. I gotta say it. I thought it was cool at first. I thought it was a cool concept, and then when you watch it, that kickoff sucks. It's not fun.
Yeah,
it's not cool. It looks weird. They barely ever get past 10-yard return. I don't like it, but I digress. Let's talk about the thing that apparently started this all. We started learning things. It's been a crazy day of the amount of information that came out. The thing that really stuck out to me was that Redbird Capital, which is the huge financial backer of the XFL, that league does not exist without them, right? The Redbird Capital at the end of the season, people were saying the day after the championship, they saw that they lost $60 million in year one. 60 mil down the drain. They are the ones who immediately initiated merge talks with the USFL. And I think beggars can't be choosers. So it makes me think that if you're the one saying, hey, let's merge, you're the one who needs the merge, right? The USFL would have just kept going. The XFL, Redbird Capital thought, we don't want to do a second season of this if we're not going to kind of buy into what the USFL is doing. So that makes me believe that the USFL would be the man in charge, would be the entity in charge, and hopefully that the USFL's teams would last. And then maybe we get a little bit of that Under Armour swag. What do you think?
Well, Redbird Capital, you said it perfectly. Redbird Capital is there with the money. They're not invested like Fox. Fox, that they're filling their TV slots, so which is not associated with the league. It's kind of its own separate business. Advertising, all that kind of stuff. That is their bread and butter. It's not just money. It's something they care about because that's their long-term wealth. If this league doesn't make it,
their stockholders care about that.
Yeah, they care about the Fox Sports wealth, the Fox Broadcasting company's wealth, not just money like Redbird does.
Yes,
I feel like they're, and I think that's the reason why the league has been better. I hope the production value stays on the USFL side because Joel Klatt is awesome, and
I love Joel Klatt, dude. I love him.
Jason Garrett's on, like there's some guys. but he was better than the XFL guys.
Yes,
And
the XFL guys were
ESPN
flailing at times.
Yeah.
Like, you shouldn't have to immediately fall back to betting. The USFL guys, especially when you talk about the Joel Klatt, the Kurt Menefees, the Collinsworths, these guys, I'm sure they didn't do it all themselves, but they had the backing knowledge. They had the info on the players. It was a better football product where you felt like you were watching maybe a little bit less impressive NFL game. Like, it felt like football, where the XFL, they had destroying and whatever on the sideline, and it just felt weird and gimmicky at times. I watched the XFL. I love football, man. I watched some CFL, and I don't even know all the rules yet still, and I've looked it up multiple times. I love football. I watched the XFL. I watched it in 2020. I watched it in 2023, and it was just not as good a product. It really was not, especially when you had Cashman Field. God, that looked bad. That looks so bad. But I don't know. I'm losing my train of thought. But KB did text right now. There are rumors out there. So we've heard the rumors that Redbird Capital reached out to the USFL as early as the day after their championship game for the XFL. There's also now rumors that some high up heads in Redbird Capital were at the USFL championship. That's what, you just saw that on your phone.
I did.
You really got to feel like the USFL is in the driver's seat at that point, right?
Oh, without a doubt. I think the people
a season ahead, in the green profit margin, like that alone, I don't care if you made $2. That is exponentially different than losing $60 million.
Well, it's 60. If you only made $2, it's $60 million and $2 more than the XFL did.
Than the XFL.
That's a huge
anything deal. In the green is insane compared to that.
I feel like every field was quality. We go back to the Cashman thing. The whole idea of them flying back to Arlington and then flying back out, like, it just seems like it was a waste of money.
That's a lot of money. That is a lot of money.
While you got the USFL, who, the gamblers were wherever the showboats were the entire season. And they kind of were traveling partners. And
they coordinated that well.
Yeah. So, like, it was well thought out of surviving a year 3, year 4, year 5. So they have to be in the driver's seat because they actually, made it 2 years. They didn't need to reach out to the XFL and be like, hey, guess what? After year 1, how about we work together? They didn't do that. They were like, all right, we're marching on to year 2. While Redbird seems to be desperate for attention from anyone. And you might have been right on that blind side, and I would love it for the UFM. But you said 3 weeks before the championship, you said that they should buy out, or if they merge. Xander asked us, if they merge, what would you do, or what your thoughts were on a potential merger? And you said to kill off the brand, and not Kelly brand, not KB.
But
to kill off
the XFL brand. Yeah. So my entire thought process with a merger was that if there is a merger, I don't see it as two leagues, right? You're never going to have two successful products that are like, hey, man, what if we just share? No one has ever thought that way in capitalism. Not one time. Yeah. Someone has to be flailing. Somebody has to need the other. And my thought process is that if that happens, the person who is needed, so in this case, we're going to assume that the USFL is the league that is better, that the XFL, they lost money and they say, we need you. Then the USFL is going to say, okay, we'll buy you out. We'll give you some money. We'll help Redbird get back some of their investment that they lost, right? Redbird is going to say, yes. They're going to say, please give us some money. Like, we are in the red. Because I don't know if you know this, but Redbird initially didn't even want to invest in sports. And then they did a couple smaller ventures and it worked out. They were in the green. Then they did the XFL and it was the biggest loss they've had. So at this point, they need somebody to come in and get their money back. They need their money. They have a lot of investors. They have stakeholders that they have to pay off. So the USFL should 100% be in the driver's seat. And if that happens, then you say, okay, we're going to have 12 teams. 8 are USFL. Pick your 4, right? at that point, you're killing the brand. You're saying we're still going to call it the USFL, right? You're saying we'll change the name, but it's not going to be XFL. Like at that point, you bury the opposition. And I think that is probably what's going to happen. And that's what I thought was going to happen from the beginning. Whoever's in the driver's seat, when the other person comes groveling, they're going to bury that brand. If this merger happens, you will never see another XFL. That will not happen. Fox is going to then own the rights, and they're never going to let it go. It's chump change to hold on to that forever, right? So I think if this merger happens, XFL's buried, it's dead. We're never seeing another one.
Yeah. So I can see this future merger league being called the USFL. I cannot 100%. See it being called XFL. There's no scenario in my head where I'm like, well, they're going to call it the XFL. There's no way. They might throw an X in the USFL.
They keep saying USXFL.
Yeah. Whoever says that is just rubbish to me.
Rubbish.
Because you have no idea. Just call it the merger.
Yeah.
You don't have to come up with new letters.
Just call it merger.
No one knows what the X means anyway since Vince McMahon, right? The X means nothing. So you're actually,
dude, it's the crossroads between dreams and opportunity.
Your short was spot on.
You thought that was funny, right? Who knew the X and XFL actually stood for the cross between the USFL and XFL?
Creative. He's being creative. That's good.
I thought that was fun.
I think it would be awesome to have 16 teams, but I think realistically 12 is going to be the answer. Do we need all those teams in Texas? I don't know. I know you're a Texan, so you're like, yeah, we love football. But other parts of the country love it too.
Yeah. I think the only reason that they would keep, let's say that they do move to Austin, then they have 4 teams, right? They have Austin, San Antonio, Arlington, which is just Dallas, and Houston. You'd have 4 teams in Texas. Now, a lot of people would say that's way overkill. What are you doing? Yes, but Texas is a state where if you put a team in a Texas state or a Texas city, they immediately could have success because Texas will take notice. Heck, Austin just got their first FC team, football club.
MLS,
FC Austin. Dude, took off immediately. Yeah. I thought it would fail. I honestly thought it would fail. Got to Austin, and all my friends who are from Austin, they have an FC Austin shirt. I don't remember what the team is called, but they love it. They think it's great. If they got a spring team, you just go play in UT Stadium. It's an open stadium. It's a lot of cement. Like, you really wouldn't have to spend that much money to keep it open. Just put some power into the lights if you have a night game and the concessions. That's not a bad place to play. And in the middle of Austin, downtown Austin, you're going to draw fans. There's people always moving to Austin, going to Austin, visiting Austin. I'm getting married in Austin in a month and a half. There's always people there. So I understand the people who are saying there's too many teams in Texas. That's too many teams. We don't need that. But fiscally, it does make sense because if you put a team anywhere in Texas, yeah, you're probably going to do well at first, right? So I get it, but whatever.
How about we go through these franchises real quick?
Okay.
And you tell me on a scale of 1 through 5, keep or get rid of, or on the chopping block or not on the chopping block.
Okay, let's go chopping block, not chopping block.
So 5 is like fully on the chopping block. 1 is not.
Okay.
All right. Let's start with the USFL. We know them best. Birmingham Stallions.
1.
I agree. New Orleans Breakers.
3.
Man, we're agreeing. Gamblers, the actual brand, the Gamblers, not a team in Houston, the Gamblers.
Just Gamblers brand?
Yeah.
2. 2 or 3. It's a 2.5. Can I do 0.5s? I feel like it's dead center. Like, I don't know. We have Jib Kelly, the history.
Well, 3 would be the middle because 1 and 2 are pretty good. 3 is nothing. 4 and 5.
Okay, yeah. 3. I would put them at a 3. What do you think?
And with the XFL already playing at Rice Stadium.
That's the hard part is that they already have a Houston team. If they didn't have a Houston team, I would almost consider them a lock.
Well, it's not Roughneck Stadium. I'm saying they have a stadium.
No, yeah. They
came together.
They lost TDECU.
Yep.
I said that. One foul swoop. TDECU. They lost that stadium.
Yep.
They're almost done working on Rice. They still haven't secured it, but they're working on it.
Memphis.
4.
You think they're closer to the chopping block?
Dude, Memphis sucks. I'm going to say it. That city sucks.
But the attendance was pretty good, and it's a good venue, and it was one of the USFL's first options. I'm shocked that you said that. I'm going to say 2. I'm closer to them being more safe than you.
They did a season there, and I know we play nice, but it wasn't that great. It was a tough go of it.
I'm talking about the actual brand and the stadium deal.
4.
You're talking about the neighborhood.
Neighborhood affects them.
Let's go to the north.
I'm also talking about facilities. I saw those facilities firsthand. I hung out in those facilities. Not awesome.
Let's go to the north. Generals.
Oh man, 5. I think they're done. If they cut teams, Generals are one of them.
Okay, I agree with you on that.
Yeah,
Stars.
I think they're done. Ooh, another 3. I don't know. They made it to a championship. They have a decent-ish following. 3, because I don't know. They could tip either way for me. I'm not totally sure.
I'm going to say they're 4. I think if there's 2 teams in the USFL that go, it's New Jersey and Philly, and that's cost and location.
Fair.
We'll get to the XFL teams. Maulers.
2. I don't think they're 100% safe.
Yeah,
I think they're pretty safe.
I think they're the most likely team to end up in Canton.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that as well, because even though the Generals and the Maulers were there this year, that was the Maulers hub. It felt like it was the Maulers hub from training camp till the championship.
Yeah, and when you're coming up through West Virginia and Eastern Ohio from where I was driving up,
yeah,
you start to see a lot of black and gold. And I know it's a lot of Steelers stuff, but
that's Pittsburgh.
It wasn't fully Cleveland until you got to Canton, basically. But that little portion that I drove through, it wasn't Cleveland and Cincinnati dominating. It was more steel.
You're still talking about New Jersey, still not even in the same state.
Michigan.
Oh, a 1. I think that would be, they'd got to keep it, especially if they're able to secure Ford Field again for season 2. I thought that was the best looking stadium on television.
I'm going to put them at a 4. I think they're on a chopping block. And hear me out.
What?
They do not have a stadium deal in place. And if
not yet, but if they do.
But if they do, it's buts and ifs and all that kind of stuff. I think the season tickets are being offered in Canton, Birmingham, and Houston. I mean, Birmingham and Memphis right now. Yeah. I think those teams are safe. I think those are the rumors right now, and I could be reading into that too much. But I think Michigan, the brand is great. I would love for them to stay. Pittsburgh and Michigan have turned into like a little bit of a rivalry with the fan base. They were terrible last year, and then they faced off in the North Championship. Mm-hmm. I would love Michigan to stay, the Royal Plum and all those specific colors that they love. Mm-hmm. And I think they had a good viewing attendance numbers. They had great attendance numbers. I think the stadium cost
too much
could come back to bite them. And unless they're going to play,
so good on TV though.
It did, but it's an NFL stadium, so it should.
Yeah.
But and there's no other option. Like they're not going to play at the Big House in Ann Arbor, right?
They can play at Ullman. That's not what I'm talking about. That's in New Orleans. Eastern Michigan, where they practiced. They could,
the great turf, though.
I don't care.
I think if this merger happens, you got to get rid of all that amateur, not professional stuff. I think eyeballs matter even more because now you got more invested.
And more people are going to notice if you do a merger and watch, honestly.
Yeah, you don't watch MAC football every week, right? Because it's not.
You don't know me. I'm an NIU fan through and through. Go Huskies. What's up?
Go Huskies.
Father grew up in DeKalb.
Isaiah Green Bay. All are great. So we went through all the USFL. So you think the biggest chopping block is New Jersey?
Yeah, 100%. I think they are the chopping block. I get it. They were good in season 1. They were terrible in season 2. I don't think they really got that much support in Canton. Oh, okay. So talk about season 1. They make it to the playoff game. They're a favorite to go to the championship. That playoff game had like the lowest numbers of any of the offseason or postseason games. I just don't think New Jersey is the market, right? I just don't think it's the market for spring football. Let's talk NFL, college, sure. Spring, I don't think it is. And especially if you're coming off your worst season, you are the worst team. I think they're gone. I think if they cut teams, Generals and XFL Vipers, first gone, easily.
Wow. The only thing is if the USFL takes over, the Generals are one of those historic franchises, Herschel Walker, all that stuff. And history matters.
Their only saving
and being in the biggest market. They are in the biggest market.
Yeah.
I think what hurts them, unless they get into a hub system with Philly, is they don't have a reasonable home field.
None.
That wouldn't be too expensive.
We've never even heard rumors of a stadium there.
Yeah. Everything's been,
None.
they're going to be in Philly or they're going to be right outside Philly.
Nothing for New Jersey. I mean, we don't even know if they've ever spoken to or gotten an email back about a stadium there. And that's one of the big things for me is if we haven't even heard rumors in 2 years that a team could actually play in New Jersey, it's not happening. And I just think they're on the block. Who else you got? Is there anybody you hadn't named?
That's it from the USFL.
All right, let's talk XFL. I'm gonna ask
DC.
you. I'm gonna ask you, son.
Right,
let's go. DC Defender.
Oh, they're a lock for safety.
Absolutely a lock.
They had good attendance. They have a good brand. They were competitive, and DC looked pretty cool. So.
Okay. So you bring up they had good attendance. They have a good brand. What about the St. Louis Battlehawks?
Oh, without a doubt, they are. If I can go a 0 because we're doing the 1 through 5, they would be the 0. I think they are safer than Birmingham Stallions.
St. Louis sold out their stadium. That's crazy.
$35,000. 35,000 people
Fans.
A game, while the next closest was 14, 15. That is
crazy.
That is crazy that you could put 2 of, I think it was DC actually, into that stadium, and they still have more. If it's 14.
That's crazy, dude.
So without a doubt, that's a market that's starved for football. They lost the Rams, obviously, years back, and they're a lock. They are an absolute lock wherever this league goes.
Okay, so we're talking about attendance. It looks good on TV. The San Antonio Brahmas, they play in the Alamo Dome, which is a fantastic stadium, was meant for the NFL, never made it. The Brahmas play there. They've put pretty good numbers in there. What do you think of the Brahmas?
I think the Brahmas them and the Renegades are, if we have to go Texas teams, right?
Mm.
I don't know how much they want to be in Texas. I think the Brahmas and the Renegades are the 2 teams that would be kind of on the chopping block, and one of the Houston teams, obviously, if they're going to get rid of one. I don't like them having the Brahmas black and gold. They got to change their colors. There's only one black and gold in this.
They're more gray and yellow.
And
okay, but
we got to get rid of the name Brahmas. We got to get rid of the name Brahmas because The Rock is gone.
We don't know that The Rock is gone 100% yet. What if we see him dapping up Daryl Johnston?
He's dapping up Deion Sanders. He's doing all this publicity. He's wrestling this past week. The Rock is doing other things.
That's fair, and
it
really is. It really is the Brahmas. Which honestly, I think the Brahmas is a cool mascot. It's not just the Bulls. It's the Brahmas. I thought their helmet was the coolest of any of them. I liked it. I liked the Brahmas. I was upset. They were the team that I wanted to choose before the season. I thought they were cool. I ended up becoming a Renegades fan because then, they had more XFL guys. My man DP's over there, and I was talking to him throughout the entire season. So I became a Renegades guy by the end. But I like the Brahmas. I like the colors. I like the stadium. I think it would be cool to keep, but I still keep them at a 3 because I don't know. Because their literal mascot is a tie to The Rock, and if they're gonna sell, it's probably gone.
But they did great attendance numbers. They were middle.
Yeah, they did. No, they had fantastic attendance.
I think they're number 4. I looked it up today. In the league.
Yeah, and San Antonio is one of the biggest cities population-wise without an NFL team, other than El Paso, Texas. They're all in El Paso. There's a lot of they're all in Texas. There's a lot of big cities in Texas. But once St. Louis left St. Louis and went to LA, I think St. Louis took over as the biggest city population-wise without an NFL team. And then it's El Paso and San Antonio.
Huh?
Weird,
Well,
right?
I would love to have San Antonio in the league. I don't know how far I don't know the Texas geography. I know where they are, but like distance-wise, how far is San Antonio to Houston?
Oh, Houston, it's like 3 hours for me either one.
Okay.
But San Antonio to Houston, I don't know. But I'll bring up another team for you. Talk about the Renegades. We're going to stay in Texas.
They're the defending champs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You think that's it? You think they're gonna?
Well, I think that if it's a true merger and they want it to appear as a true merger, you can't get rid of
the defending champion. You froze. Webb. Oh. All right, you're unfrozen.
I was wondering what was going on. Oh, 3. You got to edit this again.
Yep.
All right. The XFL had a lot of ties to the city of Arlington. So if the XFL has a lot of influence in this new league, Arlington will be a favorite, kind of like Birmingham, right?
It was their hub. It was Arlington is the Birmingham of the XFL.
So if the XFL has an equal footing in this league, or those people that are making decisions, Arlington is going to be one of the favorites more than San Antonio. And I think that's the saving grace with the championship. They also have, Bob Stoops, which I know could be changed at any minute. I think that's what's going for them. Do I think it's a great decision to be in Arlington? No, I don't. I think I'd rather be in markets like San Antonio and even right? Markets that are underserved. St. Louis, perfect example. Birmingham. I would love to see Oklahoma City and Omaha and Portland, or you know what I mean? Like I would love those cities to get a team finally. So
get the love they deserve.
I would say Arlington is a 4.
Dang. I think there are 2. I really do think they edge out the Brahmas. The Brahmas have the ties to the Rock. They're not an original XFL team. The Renegades were from 2020. They were then again in 2022. The Brahmas were not. Bob Stoops and Wade Phillips, right? Those were the 2 for Houston and Arlington in the XFL. Hines Ward has no tie to Texas. Nobody cares about him here. So
hey man, that's a Pittsburgh guy.
I get he's a Pittsburgh guy, but it's not a Pittsburgh team. It's San Antonio. So it's hard. But I give him a 2. All right, let's talk Las Vegas Vipers. Tell me. Done, dude. They're a 6.
Yeah, that's a 12.
Out. Not only did they have the worst field, they played like trash. They lost their head coach. He was a terrible head coach. That team was garbage from the beginning. I mean, oh, man. They're gone. They're absolutely gone. We don't even need to talk about them anymore. They're done.
Well, they're the only team that's not offering tickets out of the XFL. That's a fact. So I think that's chop and block.
Okay.
Seattle?
Orlando Guardians. No, Orlando Guardians.
I haven't really thought much about Orlando.
I think they're chopped.
I think they would be chopped. You don't need to go to Florida to succeed. I would
Florida's a tourism state. It's not. I mean, you don't have that many people in Orlando that are like, oh, we love Orlando because we live here. It's a tourism state. And
I think that's a perfect example because I think this league works in markets like Birmingham. People don't go to Birmingham and be like, I'm going to go visit Birmingham.
No, it's
a week there.
When you're helping drive the tourism, that's where it's a good relationship.
Yeah. So I would say closer to 5. I would say 4 or 5.
I would also say 4 or 5. Okay, and then who was the next one you wanted to talk about?
Seattle Sea Dragons.
I like it just because we get West. We get a West team. I don't know if they stay though. Where do you put them?
I think they're 5. I think they're gone. I love the logo. That was my favorite logo.
I'll say Sea Dragons was better than the Dragons. They looked like an FCS team that you beat the crap out of at the beginning of a season with their 2020 uniforms. But I thought the Sea Dragons was much cooler.
Yeah, and I think the fans are great out there. I just think if the USFL is driving this, I think money will talk. And the XFL fans need to learn that as the league merges that, hey, money matters, because obviously you can't make it past the season. And something's working here with the Moose and staff and Eric Stanks and all that. Fox is working this and doing a really great job. So I think Seattle's gone. I would love to see them, but I think you have to add more teams that way. You'd have to move some teams.
Yeah, I get it. Is that all the teams?
Trying to think. The Roughnecks.
Kind of talks about them a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. The Gamblers and Roughnecks are the two that it kind of feels like one or the other. It's really what it feels like. So I think they're both a 3.
Yeah, Houston's not being abandoned.
No, they will stay in Houston. It's just who will stay. So I think it's a 3 for both the Gamblers and the Roughnecks. It's a 3. One's going to tip one way. One's going to tip the other way. One's tipping in. One's tipping out.
I got you. You ready to talk USFL 50? We'll bring on Luke.
Let's do it. All right, let's bring on my man, Luke. All right, football fans, we are transitioning now from the merger talk onto the next 7 of the USFL 50. We've been counting down for, I don't even know how many weeks now. 4, 3?
6.
Seems like a lot more. 6 weeks? I'm bad at counting. It's okay. I just build houses. But we are now on 14 through number 8. There's only one more that we're going to talk about after this, and that's the one that I think everybody's really waiting for. But number 14 through 8, and we are so lucky to be joined by my personal favorite person from the Pro Football Newsroom. Don't tell Zach. Is Luke Miller, their Stallions representative and correspondent. Luke, how are you doing, man? Your hair looks great.
Thank you. I'm doing well. I'm excited to talk about kind of the upper echelon of players from this past USFL season.
Oh, good words, man. He comes in and he's just throwing the words at us. I love it. Upper echelon of players, not the top tier, but the upper echelon. I got them too. It's all good. So do you think there's going to be Stallions in this?
There's always the possibility for Stallions in a countdown like this.
There's like always Stallions, and it annoys me, but
it's like whenever a player got signed to the NFL, it's like there's a 50-50 shot it's a Stallion or somebody else.
It was almost more. It was almost more than a 50-50 shot. It was like, it's going to be a Stallion.
It was pretty wild.
Yeah, I don't know. Webb, have we had a single week of USFL Top 50 where we didn't have a Stallion?
I don't think so. No.
It's depressing. That's depressing.
Because they really haven't had so every team's kind of had like a block where they have like 2 or 3, like the Maulers just had it, where there's like 2 or 3 that are right there. The Stallions are stretched out from, let's face it, number 1.
We don't know that for sure. We don't know.
Poland is number 50, right? So like they're legitimately stretched out through the entire list. And I think every 7 there's at least 1 Stallion.
They're 100%. They're all through it. Can't get away from them no matter how hard we try, which
I try
my soul, but that's okay. But that's okay.
I'm also, if you watch Hammer Time, I'm also running for mayor in Birmingham. That's what the rumor on the city is after my tweet this week. So
no press is bad press. I truly believe it. Well, we might as well move into number 14 because Luke Miller is a very, very busy man, and we are lucky to get him. So I want to make sure that we get all 7 of these players in before he has to go save the world and do all that good stuff, feed poor children. So coming in at number 14, we have a Memphis showboat, Mr. Derek Dillon. What's your first reaction? Because personally, I thought too low. And Luke, we say low is like closer to 50, high is closer to 1. So I thought too low. What were your first impressions? Luke, take us away.
Yeah, I would agree with that. In my personal opinion, I think you could make an argument that Derek Dillon was the most exciting player in the USFL this past year. He was one of those guys. It was just anytime the ball was in his hand, you didn't really know what was going to happen, right? In the best sense. And he obviously didn't have quite the season that Cavante Turpin did from 2022, but I felt like he was kind of the closest thing to that, right? Like he was a guy where he'd line up outside, catch a pass, break a tackle, take it to the house, catch a screen, again, break a tackle, get 20 yards. Obviously, we know what he could do in the return game. So, his kind of big play ability really stuck out to me. And I don't know. I wonder if he was on a team that maybe had a little bit more success and he got maybe a little bit more exposure kind of at the end of the season into the playoffs, if maybe he would have been a top 10 guy or something like that. Because obviously it's like you're ranking these players on their individual merits, but the team piece comes into it, right? I mean, that's part of the reason why the Stallions have so many guys on here. It's not only are they great players, but they also had obviously a great season as a team.
They won the championship.
Yeah, that helps. So I was a little surprised. I thought he might be a little higher than this, but certainly glad he made it into the top 15 and kind of got the recognition that I think he certainly deserved. But great player, great season. One of the, I think, most fun guys to watch in the league this past year.
I agree. When I think of the players who were Turpin-esque, it's got to be Derek Dillon and Justin Hall of the Gamblers. Those were the two guys where anytime they got the ball, no matter where they were on the field, you thought they could score. And Justin Hall was electric and then just kind of non-existent for the second half of the season. So Derek Dillon was more consistent and throughout the entirety of the season. I think you're right, though, that the fact that they didn't have more success, they didn't make it to the playoffs. Like, think about the fact that Deion Kane made it midway up this list when if they hadn't made the playoffs, he might not have made the list at all. I understand that he had the kick returns, but people didn't really respect or look at him as a receiver until the playoffs where he lit it up. And he was insane. Where Derek Dillon, if they made the playoffs, who knows what he does? He might have had a 200-yard game. We don't know. He had 2 less games to prove it. But, yeah, 14, I thought as far as showboats go, I thought he was the top 10 guy. I thought he was their one guy who could have broken it. But Webb, what do you think?
Well, I believe he is the top showboat on the list, Derek Dillon.
Oh, sad for them. That's
special teams player of the year, obviously. The kick 6, right? The return 6.
That was so cool.
Yeah. Talented player. You guys said everything. I think he's
some stats.
Properly listed, ranked.
He's probably
at 14. 28 catches, right? So he didn't light it up in the receiver. You could blame that on the quarterback, but 340 yards and only a single touchdown. I think he's perfectly placed. So
okay, but think about that touchdown. Do you remember when that touchdown was? Because I do. Nobody does.
His receiving touchdown or his kick 6?
His receiving touchdown.
I don't remember who he was playing.
Dude, it was the Gamblers, man. It was the Gamblers, and we had that game locked up. We had that game on lock. He throws the ball 7 yards to Derek Dillon. Derek Dillon just decides, I'm going to turn on the burners, hit the hyper jets, and he sprints downfield for like a 70-yard touchdown to basically put us away. I mean, the guy was a game changer. That literally, without him, they don't win that game. Nobody else is fast enough. No one else is quick enough to make that play. Derek Dillon, he's a difference maker as far as I'm concerned.
That's
but I can talk about him all day, but I should talk about the next person because I love this person. Coming in at number 13 is one of the nicest men in the league, Toby Johnson. I absolutely love this man, and he's, number one in my heart. I love Toby. Webb, what do you think of Toby?
I love Toby as well. He was my first interview with part of the whole this media ride we've gone on. So Toby always is near and dear to my heart. But 42 tackles, sacks, tackles for loss, the ripped jerseys. Every time he gets held, every game he put it out there. He was a force all year, and he's a vet. Like typically, you don't see the older guys stand out as much, and he's the oldest guy in the league. So
is he 30 now?
I think he's 32 now.
32?
I think he's going on his 32 season.
Dude, he's balling like he's 22. I love it.
And he's a free agent. I highlighted on Hammer Time. I would love to see him in black and gold. Imagine him and Boogie. You'd have the mayor and the vice mayor.
I don't want to imagine that.
I'm just saying, Toby would be perfect for that defense. Any defense would love him. You'd love him in Houston.
Oh, I'd love him, dude. I would absolutely love him. Him and Jeffrey Johnson, the guy that we drafted out of OU, that'd be awesome. But whatever. then Ronheen Bingham. Dude, come on. Whatever. What do you think, Luke?
Yeah, I mean, I think Toby, one of a few, I think him and Jaron Jones, maybe there's one or two others that I'm missing, but one of the only, few players that was a repeat all USFL performer. And so, I think that testifies to his consistency, the way that he was able to, produce at an elite level last year, the way that he was able to continue that again this year. There was pictures on Twitter and, video from games and stuff of him being triple teamed by, a center and two guards. And, just kind of one of those guys that has just been dominant, every opportunity he's been given at this level. And so doesn't surprise me to see him at the top, towards the top of the list like this. And obviously I certainly think that it's deserving. And I'll put a plug in for the Stallions. We could certainly use them too as part of our defensive line rotation.
Always. I mean, I'm glad we get the Stallions plug in there. I also love the fact that Luke froze, but he froze on like just the nicest face. He's
smiling. He's enjoying what
he's just enjoying it. I don't know what happened. He's totally frozen, but I mean, as far as people freezing on the show go, I think that's probably the best frozen picture. So,
and the sound was perfect the whole time. The sound
was absolutely perfect, which is the more important thing, right? So, but
so
I love what he said.
It looked froze for me, but I wasn't sure because you guys hadn't said anything. So I was like, well, maybe it's just like my computer's glitching.
No, it is. It is frozen. You just
let's try.
I love it. Let's do it.
That still frozen.
That's awesome. I mean, it's not awesome, but it's funny.
There you go.
I love the fact that you brought up that he is one of, I believe, Webb, is it just the two? It's Toby and Jaron Jones. We're the only two repeat all USFL. That's so impressive to be able to be an all USFL 2 years in a row where, I mean, the running backs didn't, like, the league had elevated its play, which is why we don't have someone like Kavontae Turpin, partly because you're not going to have someone that is that dominant when you have people that are getting better. You have defenses that are more complex. They have guys that have played together a year and now they're going into they played their second season together. So you're not going to have guys that dominant. So to remain on top and be all USFL 2 seasons in a row says a lot. And Toby, not only that, he's a guy that people love. He's a guy people want to get behind and they want to cheer for. And that's fantastic for the league. So all around, I love Toby. As far as just being a person and player, he's number one. I love him. Him and Boog tied because the two of them talked to us after the scrimmage. Yeah, the scrimmage that they had. And I literally just walked up and they were like, come talk to us. We're humble, genuine dudes. And it says a lot.
And I do think
someone. What'd you say?
I was just going to piggyback on what you were saying too, and kind of going back to the, Derek Dillon. One of the things about Toby too, is that while the league elevated, his team did not, right? His team went from being, at least during the regular season, probably you could make a case, I mean, I guess between them and the Stallions, right, in 2022, and at least during the regular season, they were the best teams in the league. And then this year, the Generals, finished with, tied for the worst record in the league. And so his team really
were the worst. I think they were like the worst.
Yeah.
No, they were 2-8.
No, 3-7. They were 3-7 because they're still alive in the last week.
That's right. Yeah. And so to go from 9-1, where your only loss was the Stallions in the 2022 regular season, and you're in the playoffs, to 3-7, and you finish last, out of all teams, basically, I mean, for him to still be recognized for his level of play, despite that, I think, again, is a testament to the quality of player he is.
That is a fantastic point. And I love that you said, I want to piggyback off that, because that's the most military thing you could have said. And I just came off the longest weekend of Army stuff. So I felt right back at home. I'm back out in the field.
I don't know if that's good or bad, but
you're like, I want to caveat off that, which nobody uses correctly. But yeah, so they were the only team. They were 3-7, and then the rest of the North all tied at 4-6, which is
that's right.
Just below average, but we move on to someone in the South, moving back to a winning record. We have MBT, McLeod Bethel Thompson, who, I didn't know that he's just a good looking man. For some reason, I was putting together this today and he has all these cool poses, and it was hard to pick what I wanted on this graphic because he's a vibe. But what do you guys think? Luke, we'll start with you this time and your smiling face, which somehow you're ventriloquisting and you're not moving your mouth.
Yeah, it's impressive. I'll start by saying that McLeod Bethel Thompson obviously is a fantastic quarterback, especially at the start of the season, had a really, really hot start to the season. I do think 12 to me is a little high. I think that's a little bit of the sort of quarterback bias that we have, as sometimes as, followers of this game, where the quarterback position is kind of, I think, always, sort of blown out of proportion for better or for worse. And so, again, that's not to take anything away from him. I do think if you think about all the quarterbacks in the league, I think you can make a strong case that he was the second best quarterback. But that being said, especially in the latter half of the season and then into the playoffs, kind of the turnovers reared their head. Some of his kind of struggles from previous, stints in the CFL and other places kind of came back to bite him. And so, again, nothing to take away from how good of a season he had. The Breakers, again, at least in the regular season, they finished with the second best record in the whole league. They started off, undefeated for the first, I think, 4 weeks it was. So, was a great leader for them, did some really great things, great football player. The USFL, I think, was very fortunate to have him be a part of the league in 2023 and certainly deserving of recognition. Again, my personal opinion, I think compared to some of these other guys, like a Derek Dillon, for example, I think he's a little high in my opinion. But again, that's nothing to take away from him. He's a great quarterback, and I know any team in the league would love to have him on their roster. So I get why he ended up where he did.
Call me out. Yeah, I would like to have him on my roster. That'd be pretty
Or a quarterback.
Webb, what do you think?
So he had 2,433 yards, and I think Luke is right. He started off strong. He had those moments. Remember the drive against the Maulers where he gets hit on his head and everything. It stood out. But he did kind of hit a lull in the middle of the season and kind of struggled. He was closer to Troy Williams than he was Alex Magoo in QBR. So he's closer to the middle of the pack than a 12 ranking. I personally had him in the 20s just because I thought in my mind, we probably should get our second quarterback here. I don't rank kickers. We all know that. So I put
ridiculous.
I put the MBT. I was like, I need my second quarterback. It's about that time. And I believe he was 27 for me. So
I had him at 26.
I'm trying to look.
He's got a 90 QBR, which is a solid number. What's that?
I'm not going to say what I had. It defeats my entire point I was about to make.
Would you have him at 8?
I had him at 9.
Yeah. Well, there were a lot of people like that felt like in the top 10 there should have been 2 quarterbacks, and quite a few ballots had that. Yeah. And I just didn't see it. I thought he had the moments. I thought he had bright spots. Yeah. But that's.
I had him right above Kenji Bahar. I was unbiased. But no, I do agree though that he is too high on this list. Every time we would watch the Breakers, my brother, he would say, there's 3 things that I'm for sure of in life. It's death, taxes, and MB3 overthrowing passes. Because he made his name in the accuracy game and, being consistent, being able to read coverages, a veteran, but he would overthrow and he would just make bad passes fairly consistent. And in the middle of the season, you think about it, nobody wanted to even look at the Memphis Showboats. Nobody thought that they were worth a damn. And then they play MBT and he falls apart. He throws 4 interceptions in a game. It was crazy. He had his weaknesses and it showed. So do I think he's worth the number 12? I think it's a little high. But also, I love what Luke said, where he said he was great for the league. We were glad to have him, and we anybody would take him on their roster right now. And I agree with that. In a league like this, I think the quarterback play, we're going to get better quarterbacks as it grows. We're going to get better quarterback play as, people are going on to second and third seasons. But for this season, I think this was the only one we were going to get to see MBT. And I think it was the perfect season for him. And I'm glad he was here, fear the beard. I thought he was a fun guy to watch all season.
I think one of the moments that I had with MBT was when we were in training camp and we're talking to Coach Hull and Coach Horton, and they were getting ready for the Breakers for week 1.
Yeah.
And they just kept saying, yeah, we haven't seen him, but man, he's 31, 32 years old, and people still want to pay him to throw the ball. So he is talented, obviously.
Yeah, they put respect on his name. They were like, no, we're getting ready for him specifically.
Yeah. So he's a talent. He's great for the league, just like Luke said. I just feel like this ranking's he's too close to number 1. So
yeah, I agree. But getting closer to number 1, we have number 11, which is somebody that obviously Luke has to start on. His smiling face, which is just still hilarious to me. Davion Davis coming in at number 11. He's number 13 on the Stallions. This dude made some really, really fun plays this season. He seemed to be the guy who knew where Magoo was going to go when he would scramble. He just found the open space in any zone. Good receiver. Luke, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, again, maybe I'm not completely unbiased on this one, but I certainly think he's very deserving of this recognition. If you remember, coming into the season, the feature guy was supposed to be Marlon Williams, who was the Stallions' actually leading receiver in 2022. Actually had more yards than Victor Bolden, but Bolden was kind of remembered because of his championship game performance, and he was all USFL and all that kind of thing. But Marlon Williams was kind of going to be the feature guy in the Stallions offense. If you go back and watch the first game before Williams got hurt, he's the only skill position player that is in on every snap before his injury. And he had multiple targets, up to that point. And, we know what he can do. He'll be back this next season. And so we'll all get a refresher on that. But when he went down, it was really Davion Davis's opportunity to sort of step in and shine. And he took it and he ran with it. And he finished the regular season, as the second leading receiver in the league, 575 yards, which again, in only 10 games, for a league like this, that's a really impressive number. He was a huge, big play threat. Averaged almost 15 yards per catch, which was like top 5 in the league. He had, 4 touchdowns. He had a long of 71, and a lot of his long catches were because of yards after the catch, right? It wasn't just, he caught the ball on a deep route 50 yards downfield and then got tackled. It was, he caught a slant, or he caught, some kind of dig across the middle and made 1 or 2 or 3 guys miss and then went, 50 more yards to the house. I mean, I think he had almost 300 yards after catch. And again, when he had about, 575 total yards, it's like almost half of them are coming after the catch. So an electric guy could do a ton of things with the ball in his hand. Obviously a huge piece for the Stallions and what they were able to accomplish as the champions in 2023. And, understandably got an opportunity at the NFL level with the Cardinals. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. Didn't make the active roster or a practice squad. But if you watched in the preseason game against the Vikings, which I'm a Vikings fan, Ace, I know you're a Vikings fan, so you probably saw this, but he just straight mossed one of our DBs in the preseason game when they played the Vikings. And, I'm shocked he didn't get a shot, at least on the practice squad, but, you can only keep so many players, I know, at that level. So, incredible player, great guy. I don't know if you all remember this, but there was a tweet that came out after one of the Stallions home games at Protective Stadium where a little kid, like maybe, 7 years old or something like that, asked Davion for his gloves. And Davion was like, yeah, you can have my gloves. And he was like, I love you, Davion Davis. And, it kind of went viral. And it's just like, I got the chance to talk to him a few times throughout the season and check in with him, and just really kind guy, really great team player. Couldn't say enough good things about him. And he actually started out as a roughneck in the XFL. And, fortunately for us, that didn't work out for him. They overlooked what they had in his talent. And he landed with the Stallions, which was one of the biggest pickups for the team this past offseason.
Yeah, he was a tremendous talent. He had, out of the 12 games, 5 of them went for over 70 yards. And he was sharing the ball with a lot. That offense was dynamic, right? They had a lot of weapons, and the fact that he had 5 out of almost half the season where he was at least getting 70 yards. I remember the regular season game against the Maulers. He was just catching everything. He had 8 catches against the Maulers, which that might be the season high for how much they gave up to one receiver. Going into the championship, I thought he was going to tear up he was going to be that weapon again, but the Maulers seemed to focus on him a little bit, and they opened up the field for Kane. A tremendous talent. I'm glad that he's back for the league, whatever that league looks like. But I believe he should get a shot at the next level. And I think being 11, 10, 9, that's perfect for me. So
I love the place he's in. First of all, Webb, I'm amazed you had anything to say after Luke just absolutely diced that up. That was great. This is why we brought you on. The fact that he was Marlon Williams was the only person to take every offensive snap, all that stuff. That's the kind of stuff that, people don't know unless they're, people like us who are really, really paying attention to the team. So I absolutely love the insight you gave right there. But yes, I love where he is on this team or on this list. I think he's perfectly placed. I absolutely remember his performance against the Vikings, Luke. It was painful to watch as a Vikings fan, but really, really cool as a USFL fan. If I can stop kicking my camera. Davian Davis was just cool, man. He made plays. He was one of those guys that just made plays. Alex Magoo, when he would scramble, when people were getting to him, Davian Davis was the guy that, for some reason, always seemed to just know how to move with him with fluidity. So I like him on this list, and I like him at, what do we have, number 11? Yeah, but let's crack that top 10. Okay, I want to pause here. Luke, do you want to leave and come back and see if we can get you unfrozen?
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah. I can cut this part out.
Okay.
I want to make sure that, I don't want to be frozen the whole time. That would suck.
It's a podcast.
I get that. Oh, I haven't eaten. I was moving furniture because Callan's moving. So
he's moving.
Oh,
that has never happened to me before.
Look at this man. I hope my camera looks good afterwards, or else I'm gonna be upset.
I'm not sure how everything worked perfectly, except I was just permanently frozen.
Honestly, audio is the thing I care about the most. If we couldn't hear you, I'd have cut the show right there. I'd have been like,
sure.
Nope. Yeah. But I'm glad that it paused in just the nicest way possible.
Yeah. At least it wasn't like me, I don't know, rolling my eyes or something like that.
Yeah, just
yeah.
But okay. KB, I'm gonna count down 3, 2, 1. And when I hit 1, just bring up Sage Surratt, please. And we'll start right there. All right, coming in at number 10, we finally cracked the top 10. It's felt like weeks. We're finally here. We have Sage Surratt. And I know none of us are the Breakers guy. None of us like the Breakers. But this guy was pretty great. What do you guys think? Wed, let's start with you. What do you think of Sage Surratt?
I think he's too low. He's too close to number 1. I think he had moments. You think he's great because he got 11 catches against your gambling, right?
Calm
in
down.
That one game.
Calm down.
Like if you really think he had 1 touchdown all season. He played well when MBT was rolling, but he disappeared a lot. He had a couple games where he had 1 catch or 2 catches. Nothing spectacular. Nothing top 10 worthy. Was he the best tight end in the league? Maybe, probably. I just don't think number 10 should be where Sage Surratt is.
I think you're lighting Luke up over there saying, was he number 1? But real quick, before I turn it over to Luke, I want to say that I do think that he was probably the best tight end in the league. So Jay Sternberger, me and him beef a little on Twitter, but I do respect his game. He had a little bit of trouble with consistency. His hands sometimes were, he wasn't catching balls as consistently as people wanted, but it also felt like if they were in the red zone, Jace was on fire. And if they weren't, he just wasn't there as much. Whereas Sage Surratt was easily the guy that MBT would go to. If anything would happen, Sage was open for some reason. If he needed to just
1 touchdown
coverage, But that's because, think about it, 1 touchdown because the weeks that he was on, which he is also stunted by how well his quarterback did. If MBT's not doing well, the receivers are not going to do well. So it's not fair to judge him on that. But if MBT's on, they're doing great. The reason he had 1 touchdown is because Wes Hills had 8 touchdowns in 4 weeks. So he was getting them to the red zone, and then they would punch it in with Wes Hills. That's why MBT didn't have a lot of passing touchdowns in the first half of the season, because Wes Hills was doing ridiculous numbers. Like, you can't get on him for that. But I honestly do think that he was the most consistent tight end in the league. I think he was the most sure-handed tight end of the league, and I think he definitely runs the best routes. But I do respect Jay Sternberger so much that I stole his gloves at the championship game. Luke, I don't know if you even knew that, but
wow. Well, after everything you just said, you need to mail them to me.
I'll give you 1.
I'm gonna have to DM Jace after this and be like, dude, I can't believe you gave Ace your gloves and not
No,
me.
he didn't. I just took them. He threw them on the ground. He threw them on the ground, and I was like, this guy talked trash to me on Twitter. So he threw them on the ground, and they're mine now. So,
yeah, I'm gonna have to disagree with you, Ace.
Which is fair.
You're probably not shocked for me to hear me say that, but again, I don't want to take anything away from Sage Surratt. He was actually with the Stallions in 2022. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, he had some injuries and different things. He didn't really get to see the field a ton. I mean, he had a few games where he kind of had some flashes, but the Stallions didn't utilize tight ends in 2022 the way that they did in 2023. So we just didn't see as much of him. But former Stallion, so I have a soft spot in my heart for him. And obviously a great player, had a great season. He was on my list. I did not have him nearly this high personally. My thing with Surratt, I guess a couple of things. One, very similar to MBT. I felt like at the beginning of the season when they were humming, when the offense was really doing big things, a lot of that was going through Surratt. And yeah, at that point in time, maybe I would have said this is a top 10 guy in the league. But based on the latter half of the season, the way that not only the team, but I think his production fell off, it's just hard for me to think that he's a top 10 player based on what he did this past year. And again, that's not to take anything away from him. I mean, he did have 552 yards, which was 3rd best in the league during the regular season. As a tight end, I mean, that's really impressive. I think my sort of, I guess the reasons that kind of counterbalance that would be, as Webb pointed out, he wasn't a red zone threat or a big play threat, right? He only had 1 touchdown. He only averaged 11 yards per catch, which compared to some of these other guys we're talking about is a decent bit lower. And the thing with Surratt was, I think if you go back and watch the film, at least the impression that I got was so much of his production was he was kind of a safety valve in ways, right? He would run a 5-yard out route. He would run a 5-yard hitch. He would do all these underneath things, and Bethel Thompson would dump it off to him. And, he might make one guy miss, maybe get 10 yards, every now and then he might get a 15-yard catch or something like that. But that was pretty much it. If you look at the numbers, he had 552 yards, but 340 of those were yards after catch, meaning the vast majority of them came after the catch. So it wasn't like he was a deep threat. It wasn't like he was, burning guys down the middle. It was, he caught a 5-yard hitch, made one guy miss and got tackled for 10 yards. Oh, he caught a slant. Yeah. And again, I mean, if that's how the offense is designed and that's what he's being asked to do as a team, that's not necessarily a bad thing or something that, means he's not a good player or anything like that. It's just, I think what somebody like Jay Sternberger, again, I'm not going to claim to be entirely unbiased, but, Sternberger had almost as many yards as Surratt, very close to as many yards, but 17 fewer catches. Sternberger only had 117 yards after catch. He had 400 air yards. So most of his, he had 15.7 yards per catch. I mean, almost 16 yards per catch, which is crazy. I feel like for a tight end, plus led the league in 7 touchdowns, set a record. So just with Sternberger's big play potential, his catch average, the way the Stallions utilized him down the field, the threat that he was in the red zone, I just felt like he meant a lot more to his team in terms of what he could do than Surratt, who, again, in my opinion, based on the games that I watched, based on the film that I saw, functioned more as, again, a safety valve in that offense, which I understand when you've got Johnny Dixon and Jay Adams on either side, right? Like, they don't necessarily need a third guy to be doing, a 40-yard post down the field. But, again, to me, what Sternberger did was just more impressive. But, again, Surratt certainly deserves to be on this list. There's no doubt about that in my mind. I had him on my list. I just didn't have him this high.
And it annoys me because you kind of convinced me. Yeah, Sternberger was better, but the fact that he had 50 receptions on the season, number 2 in the league, right behind the all-time USFL receiving leader for new iteration, probably for Corey Coleman. He was number 2 in receptions behind him. Like, for a tight end, that's just ridiculous. And yeah, it was a lot of safety valve, but you got to think a lot of that safety valve got them out of third downs, got them out of, facing the maulers who were just stifling, especially in the short game. So I still think he was deserving. I had him at number 8 on my list. I had him right before MBT, actually. And that was because I don't think MBT could be up on that list if he didn't have Sage Surratt. So I put him before. But I did put Jay Sternberger earlier. And as we will see later on, so did everybody else. But people someone who people put before Sage Surratt is now number 9 on the list. We're moving back up to the Northern Division, and we're looking at Breland Speaks. This man, wow. This dude was ridiculous. I don't even remember making this graphic because it was one of the first ones I made, but that is a cool picture. Dang. Yeah, he was just a killer in the USFL. He's bounced around. He has a Super Bowl ring with the Chiefs. But, man, he really made his name in the USFL. That's where people knew him. What do you think about him? Webb, let's go.
53 tackles, 9 sacks. He was a force. Your gamblers know that, right? It's funny.
Yeah, we do.
All these guys here had great games against the gamblers. I'm just throwing that out there. Like that was their moment, their signature moment.
Before you move on, that's been my life as a football fan. Luke, I don't know how long you've been a Vikings fan.
Long enough to know that that's true.
To know the point I'm about to make?
Yeah,
is that my life? Yes, my life as a Vikings fan, as a Gamblers fan. Every time someone sets a new league record, every time someone has some ridiculous highlight, it's got to be against my team. It's against the Vikings in the NFL. It's against the Gamblers in the USFL. But that just happens. Also, fun fact, Sage Surratt's brother was drafted, Chaz Surratt, by the Vikings.
Yeah.
So he has a tie not only to the Stallions, but to the Vikings. So to me, too. So I liked when he was drafted. But Webb, keep going.
The Panthers had one of the best defensive lines in the league. Breland Speaks was part of it. And when Levi Bell came, he kind of stole a little bit of his thunder. But Breland Speaks led the league in sacks. I think he's too low. I'm a hater tonight. I think he's too close to 1. I don't care about sacks. Like, sacks matter, but I'd rather get the pressures and all that. And I think he kind of was there and he kind of disappeared, and kind of was there and kind of disappeared. It just wasn't consistent enough for me to place him in the top 10. I'm not saying he does not deserve on this list, but now we're splitting hairs for these top 10 players.
So he's too high. You said low. He's too high for you.
Yeah. Too close to number 1, right?
Okay.
So that's just – I'm glad – If he's coming back, right? Did he sign yet or no?
He is not. He is not signed yet. They had Vontrell. I can't remember the name.
That's right.
They had a defensive lineman signed for next season, but it was not Breland. Also, you got to think Breland is an older player. He's more of a Toby Johnson than he is a Boogie Roberts. A couple of years difference there. But Luke, what do you think?
This is exactly pretty much where I had him on my list. I actually had him at 8. So 9, I mean, I think he's kind of right where he belongs. I think he obviously had an incredible season. I will say, I think, Webb's right. He started as incredibly dominant. And once Levi Bell got there towards the end of the season and, just as teams started game, like I remember when the Stallions played them, I think it was, I want to say maybe, week 4 or 5, something like that. And at that point, we all kind of knew what Breland Speaks could do, right? He had spent a couple of weeks terrorizing teams.
Yeah.
And to Skip Holtz's credit, they really game planned, I think, well for Speaks, where they really tried to take him out of the game by just running a ton of read option, right? And Magoo could either hand it off, or if, Speaks what was going to, go try and crash and make that play, Magoo could just pull it and run around him. And so they really neutralized him that way. So I think as the season went on, teams got better at game planning for him. And like I said, kind of neutralized him a little bit. And then obviously when Bell showed up, that kind of ate into his production. But I do think, he was one of the best defenders on one of the best defenses in the league. Again, I think Webb makes a good point, right? Like we probably do give outsized, attention to sacks, right? Like I know one guy who was on here earlier, Dondre Tillman, right? Like I don't think he's gotten the love that he should.
Not
He's
at all.
overlooked a lot because he didn't necessarily get a lot of sacks last year, right? I mean, I think he had like 5 or something like that in the regular season and playoffs together, somewhere around there. But if you look at the number of pressures he had and the number of quarterback hurries and like if you look at the PFF stats that they put out, like he was top 5 in every category, right? In terms of like pass rush win percentage, quarterback pressures, run stops. Like the dude was a monster. It's just if you're kind of one of, the people that just immediately looks at sacks, you don't necessarily think of him as a top kind of guy. So I do think there is the temptation to kind of, say, well, he had a lot of sacks and that's awesome, which it is. But I think even when he wasn't getting sacks, again, I think he was such a force on the field that teams were having to kind of game plan around him. And I think, again, that is a testament to the type of player he is. Kind of like Toby Johnson, right, where he's getting triple teamed. Like he's not always maybe getting the production that other guys are getting, but he's having to be constantly accounted for by opposing offenses, and he's constantly disrupting things. And so I thought he was a top 10 guy in the league. If he decides he wants to come to Birmingham, I won't be upset. I'll put it that way.
If he decides to come to Birmingham,
I got to put my plug in. I got to put my plug in. Resign somewhere.
5.5 sacks in 2 games. That's what I kind of hold against him. The
Sure.
fact that
it was a lot in a little time.
Yeah, it's almost like Surratt. Surratt had 11 out of his 50 catches in 1 game. So like 1/5 of the season was in 1 game. Does he deserve to be on the list? Yes, but I want to have him in the top 10.
I had him. I also did not have him in the top 10. I had him at 11. I think he's I had him at 11. Like he also terrorized my team, but kind of.
You were there.
I was there. It was brutal, man. We went to a cigar bar in downtown Memphis, and I just sat there and kind of sipped on my drink, just wallowing after that game because he just destroyed us. But Luke made a lot of my points, so I don't have much to say. But yeah, I think he's a great defensive lineman. I think for the USFL, he's exactly what they're looking for. He's that just kind of fringe talent from the NFL where he's going to do well in a preseason game, but is he going to play a lot in the regular season? No, not really. If they're doing a lot of rotation, maybe, but in the USFL, this guys like him are who shine. So I'm really, really glad that he was in this league. But another guy that I'm very, very glad is in this league because we are really taking a lot of time is our last guy that we are going to talk about tonight. Number 8, Wes Hills. Man, I talked about this guy a lot this season. It wasn't even because of Wes Hills. It was because of Mark Thompson, because everybody wanted to compare the two. But Wes Hills was honestly a force in that offense. Like we were talking earlier, Sage Surratt, he would do a lot of work getting downfield, and Wes Hills would punch it in. Luke, let's start with you. What do you think of him?
Yeah, I mean, I totally get him at 8. Personally, I had him at 11, so just outside the top 10, but I don't have a problem with him being in the top 10. I think he was, clearly the second best running back in the league behind Thompson. And, like we've talked about with some other guys, I will say, he did start the season probably a little stronger than how he sort of finished. I had him just outside the top 10 because he did, especially late in the season, have trouble hanging on to the football. He finished with 4 fumbles in the regular season. Obviously we kind of know how the Breakers season sort of fizzled out at the end versus at the beginning. We've talked about that a lot tonight with all these Breakers players. But that being said, I mean, the guy had 679 yards in just 10 games and 10 touchdowns. Again, a lot of that production was at the beginning of the year. But I mean, I remember the first time the Stallions played the Breakers and they lost. I mean, they couldn't do anything to stop him. I mean, it was sad, like watching him just take the ball and get 12 yards a carry. And obviously the Stallions were able to fix that the next 2 times they played. But that first time, I mean, he was a dominant force and just a bruising, powerful back, and just imposed his will on us. I wouldn't say necessarily the Stallions had the best defense all year, but they certainly had a good defense and they had good defensive players. And so for him to just kind of run roughshod over us like that, it was a wake-up call for the Stallions. I think it was kind of a turning point in some ways for their season. And so thanks for him for helping us out with that way, humbling us and making us better. But yeah, great player. Like I said, I had him just outside the top 10, but I don't have a problem with him being in the top 10. He did some incredible things and was a huge piece of the success that the Breakers offense was able to have, which was, one of the best offenses in the league. So I certainly think he's deserving of where he landed.
What do you think?
He belongs right here. I believe I had him at 8. I might have had him at 7.
I had him at 6.
He had those 3 or 4 weeks right at the beginning of the season. He was inactive week 1 against the Maulers.
Mm-hmm.
And then he just blew up and took over the league for a good solid 3 weeks until Mark Thompson started taking off and all that. But West Hills was best back in the league for the first half of the year. He definitely deserves to be on it. Did he fade towards the end of the season? Yeah, but every wave recedes back to the ocean, right? We're going to throw breaker jokes out there.
Not just do that.
But he was force-fed, man. He was force-fed a ton. He led the league in carries per game, so that does help his statistics. And I felt some games they just kind of were simplistic with it and just handed it off to him, and he ran it up. Was it against the Stallions? Sure, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
Like Mark Thompson was dynamic.
Yeah.
And he touched the ball. This was a little bit more simple, but he was able to produce, and he deserves to be in the top 10, and I think he's perfectly placed. So,
yeah. I mean, I do think, Thompson finished the season with a yard more per carry than Hills, and I think that tells you a little bit about when it was all said and done, what they were able to do. But I think you're totally right, Webb, right? Like for the first 4 weeks of the season, first half,
he was the MVP.
So he was, he was right up there. It was either the MVP was either MBT or him, like by week 5, right? And then obviously that changed. But at that point in the year, I mean, he was as dominant as anyone.
I said earlier, I talked about him a lot, and it wasn't because of him specifically. It was because of Mark Thompson, and everybody wanted to make the comparisons. And my biggest thing was that they really just force-fed West Hills. He was getting so many carries per game. It was ridiculous. He wasn't having that much production, but you run your head into a door enough, finally that door is going to open. So that's what it felt like. And especially the fact that Sage Surratt, Johnny Dixon, Jay Adams, they're getting them into the red zone, and then they immediately just turned to West Hills, and they were like, nope, we're going to let him punch it in every single time. So it really seemed like he was just a victim of circumstance. But I remember there was one game where they just kept handing it off to him, and he just kept going. And I thought, wow, you know what? This guy might actually be the best running back in the league. You talk about Mark Thompson. Yes, he's the better back. There's no doubt in my mind. But West Hills, there were flashes where you're like, wow, this guy, he really just grinds harder than anybody you've ever seen before. So I had to give him the respect. I put him at number 6 on the list. I thought, as far as impacting a team, I mean, the Breakers don't make the playoffs if they don't have West Hills. They don't do it. So I thought he was a huge impact on that team. They really couldn't pass the ball when they got in short yardage into the red zone. For some reason, their plays were stalling, and West Hills was the reason. So I like him. I like where he is. I like him. I hope he comes back. He's a good guy. Number 8 on the list.
To kind of support the whole force feeding, he had 4 games where he had under 3 yards per carry.
I mean, there were games that they would
towards the end of the season, he was just not getting the yards that he was when he played the Houston Gamblers in week 2. So.
Yeah, I mean, thanks. But think about it. The fact that
and Stallions in week 3.
Yeah, but the Maulers killing the Gamblers offense. Mark Thompson willed them to that win. He had 2 runs where he just absolutely willed them to that win, whereas I don't think West Hills would have. Where if they had played outside of week 1, they played West Hills was inactive. They still almost lost. I think you get the Maulers later in the season, I think the Breakers go down. So even with West Hills.
Fair enough. I agree with you.
All right. Well, we have gotten to the end of the show. So anybody who's been watching at this point, once I've spliced it together, it's a very, very long show. But Thank you all for watching. Luke, thank you so much for coming on. You honestly are a wealth of knowledge. It is. I'm sitting here and you're saying things, and I'm like, oh man, he's right. Like I didn't even think of that. So thank you so much for coming on. It's an absolute blast to talk to you. Like I said before we started, this is the first time I've talked to you on camera. I've only ever talked to you in person. So it's cool to do a show and actually do something that other people are going to watch, where we're kind of riffing off of each other, piggybacking, if you will. And I think it's a fun time. So Webb, what are your last remarks?
Me?
Yes. What are your last remarks?
Sorry, you faded out there.
No remarks. Luke, what are your last remarks?
Luke's one of the best in the business.
He is one of the best in the business. I wish he was ours,
if you want to know anything about the ponies, and there's a lot of them out there. I learned that. I learned that this week. Luke is the guy. Luke is one of the best guys in the business to follow along.
You did whack the hornet's nest.
I did.
Dude, it's what we're best at, man.
Well, no,
I love it.
It wasn't even really whack. It was just, it had to be said at that time. It had to be said. Now it doesn't make a difference because the merger just overtook everything. So who the hell knows what's going on?
True.
That's completely
thank
fair.
you,
But Luke, final remarks. What did you think of the list? Do you think there's going to be more stallions moving forward? With 7 left.
I think we're definitely going to have my prediction is we're going to have some multiple in that top 7.
At least
that's at least 2 that I can think of for sure. And in my top 7, I only had 2 stallions. I wish I could have had more, but I only had 2. But
I respect that.
But yeah, no, I think I love that you guys do this. I think it's super fun. I'm glad to be able to be a part of it, both in terms of casting a ballot as well as being able to come on here and talk about it and give recognition to guys that are certainly deserving. Obviously, everybody has their own take a little bit about who should be where on the list, and people are going to agree and disagree. But I think so far, it's been a great list, and I think it's given a lot of guys who deserve recognition, some of which we expected and some of which maybe surprised people, but guys that certainly deserve recognition for the quality of play that the USFL had last season, which I thought was fantastic, and I thought was a big step up from 2022, as good as 2022 was. So love doing this. Glad we were able to make it happen, and certainly looking forward to seeing who the official top 7 will be.
Heck yeah, man. All right. Well, with that, Webb, I think we're just is this Luke, you want to just throw them up? Throw up the deuces. There we go. We will see y'all next week.